Hey guys, like I had promised in my Note 20 Ultra Mystic White unboxing that I will be pushing this phone's camera through its paces. Therefore, this video is all about that. I'm going to compare against two amazing camera phones. One of them is Google's Pixel 4 XL and second is Apple's iPhone 11 Pro. I have done all kinds of comparisons. Day, night, ultra-wide, zoom test in the night, zoom test in the day, video test, all of that is there in this video. So let's check it out. Okay, so let's start with the video comparison. In the center, you see Note 20 Ultra's 8K resolution. Yes, it comes with the 8K camera sensor. However, if you notice, the image here is slightly cropped when you compare it with the iPhone on the left and the Pixel on the right. And also, you will notice the dynamic range is really brilliant on the iPhone's output. Now, iPhone's recording in 4K 60 FPS, whereas Pixel's recording in 4K 30 FPS. This is the max that these cameras can go. Moving on, there is something more that we need to see at, and there was one big issue that S20 Ultra had, the focusing problem. And I am so happy to report that focus on Note 20 Ultra is just brilliant and laser sharp. Everything remains in focus without any issues, and you will be really happy with the focusing performance of Note 20 Ultra. Good thing that Samsung got rid of that issue in particular. And now Note 20 Ultra's focusing actually matches the other two cameras, or rather it matches the smartphone capabilities of today's world. Now the footage that you're looking at now is recorded in 4K. I wanted to see how they perform when you just walk along with these cameras. The stabilization is really good on all of these three cameras. But still, I think at the video front, iPhones are slightly ahead in terms of stabilization and other factors as well. The other big advantage that iPhone has is the HDR capabilities. S20 Ultra also had the HDR issues. Let us see if Note 20 has sort of fixed them. So iPhone's HDR, you can see the sun in the background is controlled so well, the shadows are lit up nicely in the foreground. However, Note 20 Ultra has slightly deeper shadows and Pixel also has pretty bad control in the background. Stabilization at 1080p also looks very nice, but still I am going to side again with the iPhone. For some reason, the video output that comes out of an iPhone is just so nice. Yes, color temperature is slightly off. The actual scene was very close to what Pixel is recording right now. Pixel has perfect scene how it was there to my naked eye. iPhone's color temperature is slightly off from the actual scene. We look at the color gamut and other image processing part of it in the picture comparison, but for now, I think in video, iPhone is a clear winner for me for one reason alone, and that is a brilliant high dynamic range control. And if you notice, when you pan these cameras around, you would realize that iPhone panning is much more smoother than the Note 20 Ultra and the Pixel. Okay, so let's start to look at the pictures now. When you look at the pictures, you would realize that all of these three cameras are doing a tremendous job in capturing the details and the highlights. However, where these three cameras differentiate is the color science. iPhone and Pixel generally go towards the truer scene or the natural colors. And Samsung's offering here goes by its signature thing that we know about them is the boosted colors. So they have a slightly oversaturated shades. iPhone's looking slightly overexposed to me, Samsung's sort of slightly more saturated, and Pixel I think strikes the perfect balance in terms of colors. The white balance in the outdoor scenarios is really nice and comes out brilliantly on Pixel. And Samsung's also doing a good job here, and iPhone's slightly on the cooler side. Besides, all these three cameras capture a good amount of detail and have really good highlights when you look at subjects up close. And you will continue to see a good amount of sharpness in all these three pictures. However, you would realize that Samsung's Note 20 Ultra, thanks to its 108 megapixel sensor, generally tends to have more detail when you compare to the other two cameras. And also the other brilliant thing that Samsung's Note 20 Ultra nails perfectly is the exposure in the shots. You see this particular picture, see in the background, the colors in the yellow, the pinks and the purples. All those colors are coming out really nice on the Note 20 Ultra's picture, and Pixel also has a slightly true to the scene picture. However, if you look at the iPhone's picture, the sky is kind of overexposed, and the hood of the car here, you would see that how the exposure is not controlled there. Whereas on Samsung and Pixel, both of these images have done good justice, but my vote in this exposure department goes to Samsung's Note 20 Ultra. All of this basically boils down to your personal choice and personal preference. What kind of colors do you like in your pictures? If you need really true to the scene images, Pixel is your bet. If you need saturated shots perfect for your social media, I think you can go with Samsung's Note 20 Ultra, and iPhone for some reason gives you a picture that would look perfect for editing jobs. Highlights are well preserved in all all of these three cameras and you get a really good amount of detail in the foreground as well as in the background. So you see the priorities of all these three cameras are slightly different than each other. Let's talk about the HDR control for a minute. Let's see how these cameras are performing in harsh sunlight and when sun is in the background or in the foreground. Let's see how it differs. When you push them to the limits right against the bright lit sun, you would realize the HDR control on Note 20 Ultra is brilliant now. And I cannot say the same thing about Pixel. The background HDR controls on Pixel are not really awesome in comparison. However, when you push these cameras through a variety of lighting ranges where there is a shadow in the area and there is a bright light behind the scene, you would realize that iPhone doesn't do really good. If you see here in the background, the sky is completely blown out on the iPhone, and Samsung's Note 20 Ultra has done a tremendous job. But when the scenes are simple and not complicated, you would see that all these three cameras are clicking some amazing pictures. I'm really happy to report that there are no focusing issues on Note 20 Ultra anymore. iPhone and Pixel do a tremendous job with HDR, but unfortunately here, I think Samsung's slightly pushed ahead and is kind of making the other two cameras look slightly poorer than it's offering. Now let's move on further and look at the wide angle, the ultra wide lens. Now Samsung's Note 20 Ultra and iPhone comes with the ultra wide lens, whereas Pixel doesn't have it. So let's try to look at ultra wide comparison for a minute. You will continue to notice the similar trends. iPhone's images will slightly be on the natural looking side and Samsung's images will slightly be on the saturated side. But I'm really happy that both of these cameras have ultra wide lens. Unfortunately, Pixel doesn't, because ultra wide lens kind of gives you a different perspective in photography. Picture taking capabilities from both of these ultra wide lenses are really nice. I have absolutely no complaints from either of these cameras. And if you ask me which one does the better highlight control, I would say this thing goes to the iPhone. Look at the details in the cloud. I'm not saying Note 20 Ultra is any bad here. This is also a good job done by this phone. However, if you compare the two images, you will realize that iPhone's slightly ahead from Note 20 Ultra in this particular scenario. But what doesn't work for iPhone is the white balance maintenance in the bright scenes. Okay, so let's now move on further from the other offerings on these phones are the zoom lenses or the telephoto lenses. All these three cameras come with dedicated telephoto lenses. iPhone can go as far as 10x, Pixel can go as far as 8x, whereas Samsung's Note 20 Ultra goes as far as 50x. So let's try to see, does it really make sense? We are on 8x on Pixel, we are on 10x on Note 20 Ultra, we are on 10x on the iPhone. So far things are not looking good for Note 20 Ultra. Let's try to get even closer and see. Okay, so we are at 20x now, and see the detail in this picture are not as good as what we have seen on the S20 Ultra. Anyway, let's push it forward and go all the way to 50x and see if that gimmick holds any value. Well, I am sad to report that 50x is just something that a party trick and not going to do any good favors to you in terms of your smartphone picture taking capabilities unless you change the scene. Let's try to look at a different scene and see how the zoom actually helps as well. I wanted to click a picture and wanted to see how close would I be able to get to that dove with these three cameras. So from 1x to 5x, and we will go all the way up from 5x to 50x on Note 20 Ultra, and you see how it creates a brilliant difference. Yes, I understand quality is not great, but see what actually you can capture on Note 20 Ultra zoom, which is impossible on the other two phones here. Moving on, if you remember, S20 Ultra had another problem, and that was the fringing. Because of the bigger sensor, the focus remained only on the center part of the image and the outer parts of the image actually sort of fringed. Well, that problem has also not gone away completely. You see the picture here, the padlock and the hook both are in focus on Pixel. They are very much in focus on the iPhone as well, but the hook looks slightly blurred in comparison on the Note 20 Ultra's picture. Let's look at another example. You see the camera here, all the way from the lens lid where the Sigma is written all the way back to where the Canon is written. Everything is in focus very nicely, very clearly. However, when you look at the picture on Note 20 Ultra and on the iPhone as well, you would see the Sigma part is not in focus, but the Canon part is in focus. And also the white balance here, iPhone's slightly off compared to the other two cameras. And when you tap to focus on the front part of the image, you would realize, yes, you get good amount of focus on where the Sigma is written, but you lose the focus on Note 20 Ultra on where the Canon is written. And similar things happen to the iPhone. But which is the worse off? Yes, the Note 20 Ultra is worse off, and fringing is still troubling this camera. Before we get into the night photography, let us try to look at the skin tones in the portraits. This is a sample coming out of selfie camera of all these three phones. You see how Pixel has the widest angle here because the lens on that phone is slightly wider. And iPhone does a tremendous job also in maintaining the skin tones. But Note 20 Ultra has faltered here and I really don't like the output. The background is overly exposed, skin tones are very dry and I really don't like the output here. Let's try to look at the skin tones from the main camera. All these three cameras are doing a good job, but again my favorite here for skin tones has to be Pixel, with iPhone coming in second and Note 20 Ultra not too far behind. And a thing to notice here about Note 20 Ultra's large sensor is that when you go into this mode, this is just a normal picture. This is not even a portrait shot or a live focus shot. You see the background is slightly naturally blurred compared to Pixel and to the iPhone. Talking about that, let's get into the portrait modes or the live focus like Samsung calls it. And whatever Samsung was getting right in the previous picture does completely wrong here. For some reason, skins look slightly smoother and I just don't like the output from Note 20 Ultra. Okay, so let us start with the night scenes now. Now you know that iPhone and Note 20 come with the ultra-wide lens, therefore they both are at 0.5x and Pixel doesn't, so therefore it is at 1x. Let's equalize the level playing field and everything comes to the 1x now. At 1x things look okay and I think the output from Note 20 Ultra does slightly better as the noise control is much better at that point in time. Let's try to get even closer to the subject and we go to the 5x. And yes, the same trend continues. I was right, as the Samsung's Note 20 Ultra is doing a tremendous job with the noise control here. Pixel not very far behind, but iPhone kind of lost it completely here. Let's go even further and see which one does the better job. And we are at 10x zoom at the moment and you see the big difference. Now Samsung's done a tremendous job in controlling the noise, getting you the details, everything is just perfect. Whereas iPhone's image looks slightly like a big blob of light and to me I would render it useless. And also one more thing to note, that in night scenes the zoom on Note 20 Ultra doesn't go beyond 10x. Now when you give these three cameras enough light in the scene, all of them have really good results. In fact, they come really close to each other compared to where they were during the daytime. All of them capture really good amount of colors, iPhone slightly being on the cooler side of things and Note 20 Ultra on the slightly warmer side and Pixel somewhere in between. No matter what you're pointing your phones at, generally pictures come out decent if there is a decent amount of light in the scene. All of these three cameras come with a dedicated night mode. What night mode actually does is kind of enhances the scene and gives you more detail compared to what you would get from a non-night mode picture. There is more light in the scene, the sharpness gets enhanced, the noise gets controlled. There's so much that happens behind the scenes when you just summon the night mode on any of these three cameras. Samsung continues to show its brilliance in controlling the noise in the background and also in the foreground. However, I just have one small complaint and in fact kind of a deal breaker as well. Because when you talk about the night photography, it needs to look like a night, guys. But unfortunately, Samsung doesn't believe in that and all the scenes are just very brightly lit. Therefore, my personal preference here in the night scenes is actually Google's Pixel. Let us look at how these cameras perform when you project them towards bright lit objects. You see, I was just being very happy about Pixel performing well, but this is a scenario where Pixel just falters badly and comes right in the end when you compare amongst all these three cameras. Night mode on Note 20 Ultra, thanks to its brilliant noise control, gets you great amount of detail if you are pointing your camera towards some bright objects. It controls the noise, dims the light and gets you so much more detail that is there around these lights. And iPhone's inconsistent performance just continues here as well. Let us talk about one big problem that is there with the iPhone in the night mode. When there is good amount of light, you don't notice anything and everything's okay. But if I tell you, okay, the light is going to be a challenge, the ultra-wide lens on iPhone absolutely falters. That's because it doesn't have any night mode capabilities at all. On one side, Pixel doesn't have an ultra-wide lens, and on the iPhone, when you have it, you don't get the night mode. So yeah, that's about it. So which of these three cameras do you like? Tell me in the comments and do subscribe if you want to watch more of my content. Thank you for watching, guys. Cheers.